Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya.
If destiny is already written, why do our choices still change our lives so deeply? Why does Lord Shiva appear in many forms instead of one fixed image? And what if the real secret of destiny is not hidden in the future, but in how we understand life today? Many people grow up hearing that destiny controls everything. When life becomes hard, we often say, "This is my fate." When things go well, we say, "I was lucky." But ancient Indian philosophy gives a more balanced view. Texts like the Bhagavad Gita explain karma as action and result, not as blind fate. This means life is shaped over time by what we do, how we think, and how we respond. Destiny, in this view, is not a fixed punishment or reward, but a direction that can change slowly with awareness and effort. This idea is widely discussed by scholars and can be verified in classical texts and commentaries. Lord Shiva is deeply connected to this understanding. In many Shiva traditions, Shiva is not mainly shown as a god who grants quick wishes, but as a symbol of balance, awareness, and transformation. The stories of Shiva's many forms and avatars come from different texts and regions, and there is no single, universally agreed list. This is important to say honestly. What matters more than the number is the meaning behind these forms. Each form reflects a response to disorder, ego, fear, or ignorance, problems that still exist in our daily lives today. In this video, we will explore how the idea of Shiva's avatars connects with real human struggles like confusion, failure, pride, and suffering, without exaggeration or blind belief. The goal is not to tell you what to believe, but to help you understand how these stories have been used for centuries to think deeply about destiny and responsibility. Watch till the end to see how these ideas fit together into one clear picture. And if this kind of calm, thoughtful content helps you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so more people can learn with us. When we talk about destiny, many people imagine a fixed script written at birth, something that cannot be changed no matter what we do. However, classical Indian philosophy presents a more careful and balanced idea. In texts such as the Bhagavad Gita and several Upanishads, destiny is closely linked to karma, which simply means action and its result. This is a fact supported by centuries of commentary and study. Karma does not mean instant reward or instant punishment. Instead, it explains that actions, thoughts, and intentions slowly shape the direction of life over time. Because of this, destiny is not described as blind fate, but as a path influenced by repeated choices. In daily life, people often blame destiny for failure, poverty, illness, or broken relationships. It can feel comforting to believe that suffering happens only because of fate, especially when effort does not bring quick results. But ancient teachings suggest something more practical. They explain that effort still matters, even when outcomes are delayed. A student who studies regularly may not succeed immediately, but the habit of learning increases future chances. In the same way, honesty, patience, and self-control may not show results in one day, yet they slowly change life conditions. This does not deny hardship or inequality. Some starting conditions, such as family background or health, are not chosen, and this is openly acknowledged in philosophy. Still, response to those conditions remains important. Lord Shiva is often linked to this understanding of destiny. In many Shiva traditions, Shiva is not mainly shown as a god who changes fate by granting wishes. Instead, he represents awareness, responsibility, and balance. This is an interpretation based on symbolic readings of texts, and scholars openly discuss it. Shiva appears in stories when order is lost, not to erase past actions, but to restore clarity. This shows an important idea. Destiny responds to understanding, not fear. A common misunderstanding is that destiny means helplessness. Ancient texts do not support this view. They describe life as a long process where awareness plays a central role. When a person acts without awareness, problems repeat. When awareness grows, choices improve and results slowly change. This does not promise perfect outcomes, and no text makes that claim. It simply explains why effort, thought, and responsibility still matter. Destiny, in this view, is not an enemy controlling life, but a direction shaped over time by how we live each day. To understand why Lord Shiva takes many forms, it is important to first understand what the word avatar actually means. In Sanskrit, avatar means descent. In religious and philosophical texts, it does not always mean a physical birth in the human sense. Very often, it means the descent of a principle, an idea, or a form of awareness into the world. This is a fact explained by scholars who study Hindu philosophy and can be verified through traditional commentaries. In the case of Shiva, this idea is even more complex. Unlike Vishnu, whose avatars are more clearly listed in many texts, Shiva's forms and avatars are described differently across Shiva texts, regional traditions, and oral stories. There is no single, universally accepted list, and this uncertainty is openly acknowledged by historians and researchers. This difference itself teaches an important lesson. Shiva's appearances are not meant to show power or to create a fixed system of belief. They are responses to imbalance. In many stories, Shiva appears when rules stop serving truth, when pride grows too strong, or when awareness is lost. Sometimes he appears as a teacher, sometimes as an ascetic, and sometimes as a fierce force. These forms are symbolic and moral in nature. They reflect the problems of the time in which the stories were told. This is not a claim of historical events in the modern sense, but an explanation of how societies use stories to pass on values. There is also an important difference between Shiva and Vishnu traditions that scholars often point out. Vishnu is usually shown as preserving order by direct intervention, while Shiva represents transformation. Transformation does not erase the past, it changes direction. This connects deeply with destiny. Shiva does not appear to cancel karma. Instead, he appears to restore balance so that actions can lead to clearer results. This idea can be compared to real life. When systems fail, such as unfair rules at work or harmful habits in society, change does not come from ignoring the problem. It comes from facing it directly and correcting it. From a modern view, Shiva's avatars can be understood like reform movements or moral awakenings. They do not remove responsibility from people. They remind people of it. This is why Shiva's forms change according to time, place, and need. The lesson is clear and practical. When balance is lost, change is necessary. Destiny does not improve through waiting alone. It improves when awareness leads to action. And Shiva's many forms exist to reflect that truth. One of the most repeated images of Lord Shiva across texts and traditions is that of a yogi sitting in deep silence. This image is not accidental. In Shiva philosophy and in many symbolic stories, Shiva represents discipline and control over the self. This is not presented as a miracle or a supernatural power, but as a skill developed through long practice. Texts connected to yoga and meditation, such as ideas later systematized in the Yoga Sutras, explain that the human mind is often restless, pulled by desire, anger, fear, and distraction. These teachings are factual philosophical explanations, not claims of instant spiritual results. Many forms of Shiva highlight this inner discipline. Shiva living as an ascetic, wearing simple clothes, and choosing silence over comfort is meant to show mastery over desire. This does not mean rejecting life or society. It means not being controlled by impulses. Ancient stories often warned that lack of self-control leads to repeated suffering. This idea is still very relevant. In modern life, people struggle with addiction, constant distraction from screens, quick anger, and impatience. These problems are not caused by destiny alone. They grow when habits are left unchecked. Philosophy explains destiny here as habit-driven outcomes. What we repeat becomes our direction. A common myth about destiny is the idea that people are born with fixed weaknesses that cannot be changed. Ancient teachings do not fully support this. They accept that people are born with different tendencies, but they also state that discipline can slowly reshape those tendencies. For example, someone who reacts with anger may not change in one day, but steady effort can reduce that reaction over time. This is not opinion alone. Modern psychology also supports the idea that habits shape behavior, which supports the philosophical view in a different way. Shiva's yogic form teaches that the strongest power is not control over others, but control over oneself. This lesson does not promise success, wealth, or comfort. It promises clarity. When the mind is clearer, decisions improve. When decisions improve, outcomes slowly change. Destiny, in this sense, responds to discipline. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes more understandable. It is important to be honest about limits. These teachings do not remove pain or guarantee results. They offer a method, not a shortcut. Shiva's role here is symbolic. He stands for the idea that inner discipline is the first step toward changing any life path. Without that discipline, destiny feels heavy. With it, destiny becomes something we can face with strength and patience. Many stories connected to Lord Shiva focus on one clear human weakness: ego. Ego, in simple terms, is the belief that one is greater, more important, or more complete than others. Ancient Indian texts repeatedly warn that ego blocks understanding. One well-known story often discussed in Shiva traditions is the Lingudbhava episode, where Shiva appears as an endless pillar of light to humble Brahma and Vishnu. It is important to be honest here. Scholars explain that this story is symbolic, not a historical event in the modern sense. Its purpose is to teach a lesson about limits, not to prove superiority. In this story, Brahma and Vishnu try to find the beginning and the end of the pillar, believing their power can measure everything. They fail, which shows that even great power has limits. The lesson is not that gods are weak, but that ego creates blindness. This idea appears again and again in philosophy. When ego grows, learning stops. When learning stops, mistakes repeat. This connects directly to destiny. Many people believe success proves they are favored by fate, while failure proves destiny is against them. Ancient teachings challenge this view. They explain that success can increase ego, and ego can quietly lead to future failure. In modern life, ego shows up in different forms. It appears in the need for constant approval, in the belief that status equals worth, and in the refusal to accept mistakes. Social systems often reward pride, but philosophy warns against it. When leaders stop listening, systems fail. When individuals stop learning, growth ends. These are observable facts in history, not religious claims. Shiva's role in these stories is not to punish ego, but to expose it. By breaking pride, clarity returns. Humility, in this sense, does not mean weakness or self-hate. It means seeing reality without distortion. When a person understands limits, better decisions follow. Destiny improves not because of blessings, but because judgment becomes clearer. It is also important to separate belief from fact. The stories themselves are part of religious tradition, while the lesson about ego is philosophical. One does not need blind belief to see the truth in the lesson. Ego delays growth, while humility allows learning. Shiva's avatars that break ego exist to remind people that power without awareness becomes dangerous. Destiny is not destroyed by ego in one moment, but it is slowly damaged by repeated pride. This chapter teaches that lowering ego is not a loss. It is the beginning of real strength and wiser direction in life. Among the many stories connected to Lord Shiva, one of the most discussed is the episode of the poison during the Samudra Manthan, the churning of the ocean. According to the Puranic tradition, when gods and demons worked together to churn the ocean in search of shared resources, a deadly poison emerged before any reward appeared. This detail is important. The poison came first, showing that harmful results can arise even from cooperative effort. The story says Shiva consumed the poison to protect balance, holding it in his throat. It is necessary to be clear and honest here. Scholars explain this story as symbolic, not as a physical act meant to be copied. The symbolism points to responsibility, not self-harm. In this teaching, Shiva does not remove suffering from the world. He prevents it from spreading further. This difference matters. Many people believe compassion means escaping pain or avoiding responsibility. Ancient philosophy presents a different idea. Compassion is the willingness to carry responsibility so that harm does not grow. This is not described as destiny's punishment, but as a conscious choice. Texts do not claim that suffering is good or holy by itself. They show that when suffering is faced with awareness, it can protect others and restore balance. This idea connects strongly with real life. Parents often carry silent stress to protect their children. Caregivers work long hours with little praise. Many people take responsibility at work or in society without public recognition. These actions are not driven by destiny forcing them, but by values guiding them. At the same time, philosophy is careful not to glorify pain. Endurance is meaningful only when it prevents greater harm. Blind suffering without purpose is never praised. A common myth about destiny is that pain always means punishment for past actions. Ancient texts do not fully support this view. They acknowledge that pain can arise from many causes, including shared systems, natural limits, and collective actions. The response to pain matters more than its source. Shiva's role in this story is not that of a savior who removes all hardship, but of a protector who accepts responsibility to stop destruction. It is also important to separate compassion from victimhood. Compassion is active and aware. Victimhood is passive and draining. Shiva's act represents strength, not weakness. It shows that carrying responsibility requires inner stability. Destiny, in this lesson, is not softened by escape, but reshaped by courage and care. The teaching reminds us that life becomes meaningful when responsibility is accepted with clarity, not when pain is simply blamed on fate. When people hear the phrase, 19 avatars of Lord Shiva, many assume there must be one fixed and official list accepted everywhere. In reality, this is not the case, and this point is important to understand clearly and honestly. Different Shiva texts, regional traditions, and temple cultures describe Shiva's forms in different ways. Some lists mention fewer forms, some mention more, and some do not focus on numbers at all. Scholars of Hindu studies openly acknowledge this variation. There is no single text that gives a universally accepted list of exactly 19 avatars, and this uncertainty is not a weakness of the tradition, but a feature of it. Ancient Indian philosophy often valued meaning over counting. Numbers were used as teaching tools, not strict limits. The idea behind listing Shiva's avatars was never to create a checklist, but to express how one principle can appear in many ways depending on time, place, and need. This explains why one region may honor Shiva as a fierce protector, while another may focus on him as a peaceful teacher. Both views come from the same source, but reflect different human needs. This approach is supported by academic studies of Puranic literature, which show that texts evolved over time through discussion and interpretation. This flexibility carries an important lesson about destiny. Many people search for one correct path in life and feel anxious when their journey looks different from others. The Shiva traditions suggest something calmer. Just as there is no single fixed list of avatars, there is no single fixed way to live a meaningful life. Different paths can lead to growth. Destiny does not demand sameness. It responds to sincerity and effort within one's own situation. There is also a warning here. When people become too focused on literal details, such as exact numbers or rigid definitions, they may miss the deeper message. Hindu philosophy repeatedly cautions against blind literalism. The purpose of these stories is reflection, not argument. This does not mean facts do not matter. It means facts serve understanding, not ego. From a modern point of view, this idea is easy to observe. People succeed and grow in different ways, through different skills, backgrounds, and struggles. Comparing paths often creates frustration. Shiva's many forms remind us that truth can express itself in more than one shape. Destiny is not a single road forced on everyone. It is a wide landscape where meaning comes from how honestly one walks their own path. This chapter teaches that openness, not rigidity, brings clarity and peace. As the ideas of Shiva's forms come together, many traditions point toward one final understanding. Shiva is not only a figure in stories, but a symbol of awareness itself. In the Upanishadic view, which influences later Shiva philosophy, the highest reality is consciousness, the ability to see clearly without confusion. This is a philosophical position, not a claim of physical presence. When Shiva is described as still, silent, or beyond form, it reflects this idea of awareness rather than a human-like action. Scholars widely discuss this interpretation, and it can be explored through commentaries on the Upanishads and Shiva texts. People often feel trapped by destiny because they believe their life is controlled by forces outside them. Fear of change, fear of failure, and fear of loss create a sense of helplessness. Ancient teachings explain that this feeling comes from lack of awareness, not from destiny itself. When actions are driven by fear or habit, life feels repetitive. When awareness grows, choices widen. This does not mean all problems disappear. It means responses become wiser. The difference is subtle, but powerful. One simple way these teachings explain change is through a clear process: observe, accept, and act. Observation means seeing reality honestly, without denial. Acceptance does not mean liking the situation, but recognizing it fully. Action then becomes thoughtful instead of reactive. This approach is supported both in philosophy and in modern studies of behavior. It shows that awareness leads to better decisions over time. This is where destiny takes on a new meaning. Destiny is not an enemy to fight, or a script to obey. It is a pattern shaped by repeated actions. When awareness improves, patterns change. Shiva represents this steady awareness. He does not rush, promise quick results, or remove effort. He stands for patience and clarity. It is important to be honest about limits. Awareness does not guarantee success or comfort. Life still includes uncertainty, loss, and limits beyond control. Ancient texts never deny this. What they offer is freedom from confusion. When the mind is clearer, suffering does not multiply through fear and blame. In this final lesson, the secret of Shiva is simple and practical. Change begins inside, not outside. Destiny listens to clarity more than complaint. When awareness rises, even difficult paths become meaningful. This is not a belief that must be accepted, but an idea that can be tested through living. Understanding this completes the journey of these teachings. As we reach the end of this journey through the many forms of Lord Shiva and the lessons they carry, one clear idea stands out. Destiny is not a fixed path that forces every action or result. Ancient Indian philosophy, as explained in texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, presents destiny as something shaped by actions, awareness, and responsibility over time. Life does not follow a strict script. Instead, patterns appear based on how we think, how we respond, and the choices we make every day. This is a fact clearly described in classical texts and widely discussed in scholarly studies. Understanding this helps remove the feeling of helplessness that many people experience when faced with challenges. The stories of Shiva's avatars support this understanding. Whether he appears as a yogi, mastering his mind, a destroyer humbling the ego, or a compassionate protector accepting pain, each form represents a principle that humans can apply in their own lives. These are not miraculous events that magically change reality. They are lessons in clarity, discipline, humility, and courage. By seeing these forms as guidance rather than literal miracles, we can learn practical ways to improve our own lives. This interpretation is widely accepted by scholars and can be verified through traditional texts and commentaries. Another key point is that awareness is central to shaping destiny. Shiva's symbolism teaches that when we observe our situation honestly, accept it fully, and act with clarity, life becomes easier to navigate. Challenges remain, and not every outcome will be perfect, but thoughtful action reduces confusion and regret. This approach is supported both by philosophical tradition and modern studies on human behavior, showing that habits and choices steadily shape results over time. Finally, these teachings remind us that life is not about waiting for luck or blaming fate. It is about taking responsibility, cultivating awareness, and applying the lessons of balance, humility, and discipline. Destiny responds not to fear, but to courage and clarity. By following these ideas, we can face life with greater strength, understanding, and purpose, making each step meaningful while respecting the natural limits and uncertainties that all human beings share.